Look at any crowd on Earth and you'll notice something strange. Same skull, same brain, same ancient African roots, but on top of every head, something wildly different is growing. Pin-straight strands, loose waves, tight, springy coils that grow up instead of down. For centuries, people didn't just notice this difference, they ranked it. In apartheid-era South Africa, officials sometimes used the infamous pencil test, pushing a pencil into someone's hair to help decide how that person would be racially classified. Whether the pencil stayed or fell could affect where someone lived, studied, and worked. Good hair. Bad hair. Fake rules dressed up as truth and enforced for generations. But biology tells a very different story. For most of human history, nobody was really asking whether hair looked beautiful. The question underneath it was older and simpler. Could this particular body survive in this particular place? It was survival gear, built for a problem sitting right on top of your skull. So why does the exact same species produce hair that can be straight, wavy, or tightly coiled? The answer starts with a trade our ancestors made, long before hair mattered at all. Millions of years ago, our primate relatives kept their fur. The leading explanation is heat. Fur traps warmth, and that can become dangerous on an open savanna. A mostly hairless body that sweats can keep moving. It can walk, forage, and sometimes run for long periods under a brutal sun. That trade gave us endurance, but it left one spot dangerously exposed: the scalp. The human brain is remarkable, but the nervous system is extremely sensitive to overheating. As core temperature rises, coordination, judgment, and eventually survival begin to suffer. Once the fur was gone, the equatorial sun hit the scalp directly. No barrier, no shade. To test whether hair shape could affect heat, researchers placed different human hair wigs on a thermal mannequin under simulated sunlight. They compared a bare scalp with straight, moderately curled, and tightly curled hair. Every type of hair reduced some solar heat reaching the scalp, but tightly curled hair reduced it the most. Tightly coiled hair solved the problem through its shape. Instead of lying flat, it grows upward and outward, lifting off the scalp entirely. That creates a gap, a cushion of air sitting right above the skin. Air is a poor conductor of heat, so that cushion acts like a buffer, slowing down how fast solar heat can reach the scalp in the first place. The important advantage may not be that curls make sweat evaporate faster. Hair can actually limit some evaporation from the scalp. But because tightly curled hair allows less solar heat to enter in the first place, the body may need to produce less sweat to remain cool. In an environment where every drop of water matters, reducing both heat gain and the need to sweat could be a major advantage. Evolution rarely has just one cause. Hair shape was likely shaped by several pressures acting together: sun exposure, humidity, genetic drift, and possibly mate preference may all have played a part. But heat regulation is one of the clearest, best supported pieces of that puzzle. It's not that coiled hair is better, it's that it may have been especially useful in an environment where intense solar heat was a constant threat. But humans didn't stay under that sun forever. Over tens of thousands of years, groups moved out of Africa, north into colder, cloudier land. And here the story becomes less certain. As people entered regions with weaker sunlight, the intense pressure favoring tightly curled hair may have weakened. But scientists do not yet have one proven explanation for why straighter hair became common in some populations. Cold, humidity, mate preference, migration, and genetic drift may all have contributed. The honest answer is that scientists understand the possible advantage of tightly curled hair better than they understand the exact evolutionary advantage of straight hair. So what actually decides which way your hair grows? The answer sits underneath the skin, in a structure called the hair follicle. A round follicle tends to produce straight hair. A flatter, more oval follicle tends to produce coils. But follicle shape is only part of the mechanism. Differences in how cells grow inside the follicle and form the hair shaft also help determine whether a strand bends, twists, or remains straight. Wavy hair sits somewhere between the extremes. It is a spectrum, not a set of fixed biological boxes. If climate were the only factor, hair texture would form a simple map. It does not. Human migration, population mixing, random genetic changes, and possibly sexual selection all made the pattern much messier. The variation inside individual regions makes that clear. People living in similar climates can still have noticeably different hair textures because ancestry is not a simple reflection of today's weather. Even tropical populations do not all have identical hair. Some have tightly coiled hair, while others have looser curls, waves, or straighter strands. That alone tells us sunlight cannot be the entire explanation. That's the first crack in the idea that hair texture is a fixed racial marker. It was never following geography alone. Here's the detail that breaks it completely. Some of the genetic variants most strongly associated with straight hair in East Asian populations are different from those commonly associated with hair shape in European populations. Researchers can actually trace this. When they compare the genes linked to hair shape across different populations, they don't find one simple universal straight hair gene. Instead, they find different combinations of variants influencing follicles, hair shafts, thickness, and curvature. That suggests similar-looking hair may have developed through partly independent evolutionary histories. Evolution found comparable solutions more than once, using different tools each time. What's striking here isn't that evolution repeated itself. It's that it never needed to invent a different kind of human to do it. It just kept reusing the same basic toolkit in different combinations on the same body. That means there was no single moment when straight hair or coiled hair appeared. Those are modern labels laid on top of a much slower, messier process. One with no fixed rulebook, only recurring solutions to the same handful of problems. And the world those solutions were built for barely exists anymore. Imagine someone who grew up in Beijing carrying hair inherited from ancestors who lived for generations in one environment, then moving to the extreme heat of Dubai. Or imagine someone who grew up in Lagos, then moving to Toronto, where the same inherited hair is suddenly being worn under hats, dry indoor heating, and winter snow. We reach for hats, blow dryers, chemical straighteners, tools trying to catch up to migrations that happened in a single lifetime, not tens of thousands of years. Your hair texture isn't a ranking. It's not proof of anything except movement. It's a record of which sky your ancestors lived under long enough for it to leave a mark. Every texture on every head alive today is part of an unfinished answer to a question our ancestors never got to ask out loud. How does this body survive here? So think back to that pencil and the rule it was supposed to enforce. It was never measuring worth. It was never measuring civilization. At best, it was measuring a complicated history of ancestry, migration, chance, and environments long gone. If you've ever judged a hairstyle as neat or messy, professional or not, this is the science underneath it. Hair is one of the first things we notice about another person, but it may be one of the worst things to use when deciding who that person is. Subscribe if you want more of these hidden survival stories.